Hello and welcome to my May TBR. I'm going to jump right in because I've noticed in a lot of my videos that they tend to be a little long because I am a yapper and I will talk for hours upon hours. So trying to reduce my editing time and maybe the watch time and everything and reduce some of my yapping. We're gonna get right into it. So this month I read a total of 9 books and that was about 3,000 pages. And I did not get my average rating. I forgot. I'll put it somewhere on the screen. I do believe it's probably pretty low this month though, just because I gave a lot of things like 3 stars. And I gave like 1, technically I don't think I rated it on Goodreads, but I probably would say it was like a 1 star. So I feel like my average rating this month is definitely going to be lower. The first book I'm going to be talking about is The Horror by David Sodergren, and this completed my buzzword challenge for the month, which was a book with a outline on the cover. As you can see, the little monster guy is outlined or in like a box. And this was a Scottish, I believe, folklore horror of an older woman who lives on this island. It's a very small community and people are leaving more and more because there is this corporate company coming in to buy up all the land to buy golf courses, which is literally a nightmare. That is in alone a horror. So, and she's living in her cabin alone after her husband has passed away, and one day she stumbles upon a creature who may be there to help her out a little bit. I think this was interesting. I feel like this was unexpectedly, 1, a very funny story, and 2, a very sweet kind of like heartwarming story in a way, which is so funny because this is a monster horror where people are definitely getting killed in crazy ways. It had just very much this tone of like this old woman reflecting on her past and all her good memories, like living on the island, raising her children, marrying her husband, and you know, not wanting to give up this piece of her history to these corporate people, despite the fact that they're offering her all this money and threatening her, and she is one of the last people holding her ground. And I just find that very obviously admirable, and I really loved her as a character. I feel like she was kind of a badass grandma, so loved that aspect. I loved her character and her story. I think in terms of a horror, there were some really crazy gory scenes. I kind of almost wish they pushed the horror a little bit. It was definitely more monster horror in the sense that like kills were quick and gory. I feel like I've said that word a lot, rather than like eerie and spooky, which I think is what I thought was going to be the vibe a little bit more. But still overall enjoyable. I feel like I gave this like maybe a 3.5 or 4, maybe somewhere around that. I have to check. This month was weird with ratings, I'll tell you that right now. I feel like nothing was what I expected it to be, so I had a hard time rating things, but I digress. Next book I finished was The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. As you can see, this was off my physical TBR, which I always love to get things off my physical TBR. This is about a man who passes away at I think 87, and he is greeted by 5 people in heaven who reflect on how they have been affected by him or he has been affected by them, and the choices that led him to where he is now. It's funny because I feel like I see some similarities in this and The Horror, which I don't think many people would make that comparison at first glance, because again, one's like a monster horror and this is it's kind of supposed to be the sweet heartwarming story of a old man. But I mean, like I just told you, the grandma in that reflected a lot about her time on the island, her time growing up in that house, or like raising her family in that house. So it was kind of a lot of like memories and stuff. And this obviously has a very similar vibe because he is reflecting directly on the choices he made throughout his life, and he's given a glimpse into why those choices were kind of necessary, or why he, you know, something that seemed like out of the blue and like no explanation is explained to him in the afterlife. I did enjoy this. I thought it was sweet. I think I chose this for my prompt last month for a book that might make you cry. I think I shed a tear. It was really sweet, and I can see why a lot of people like this. I think, however, that this concept has been done better recently. But I've just heard in the past, even like year or two, that this kind of idea of reflecting on your past and kind of meeting people in your life who has been affected by you or vice versa, is kind of almost a not popular theme, but I've seen more and more, and I think I'd be interested to read those because, like I said, like while this was very sweet and charming, it didn't bring anything novel or like anything I kind of hadn't heard before, which is not a bad thing. I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel to have a good story, but yeah, it was definitely enjoyable, just maybe not a book that's going to stand out to me in a few years, ironically. Next, I finished I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jenna McCurdy. This was her memoir, and I don't want to say enjoyed. I think her writing was really interesting because it was very like casual. It was very much, again, actually a lot of memory stuff in this first half of the TBR or the wrap up, but she was again reflecting a lot on her childhood, her relationship with her mother, how not only it affected her as a child, but really how she only began to realize the abuse and the things that were wrong with their relationship much later in her life, which was somewhat surprising to me. And by much later, I mean the abuse started pretty much very early on, like as a child, and she didn't really, I think, begin to understand what had been done to her until she was 18 or 19, like almost after her mom passed, is when I feel like the story became of her like being like, oh, this was not right. And like that there's definitely like hints throughout her lifetime of like her relationship not being normal with her mother, but I feel like it really didn't like that idea didn't come to fruition until she was much older, which was very interesting and really sad. I feel like it's such an interesting outlook to see that this person who, you know, a lot of people my age have grown up watching on like Nickelodeon, and knowing that she was having such a difficult time behind the scenes while we were all just enjoying her character is kind of a really just like sad like perspective to have. I think that really hammers in the idea of you never know what other people are going through, and to try to give people grace, because I mean that is just such a sad situation, and I'm hoping that she's much better now. I would really like to read her new book, which is a novel, not like, it's not nonfiction, it's fictional, although I think it is inspired at least in part of her own life. I think it's called Half My Age, so I would like to pick that up. I really wanted to read her memoir first though, because I feel like it'll give me a better insight into the characters in that book. Next, I have another physical book. This is The Strawberry Patch Pancake House by Lori Gilmore. She is the author of all the Dream Harbor book series, so like Pumpkin Spice Cafe, Cinnamon Bun Bookstore, Christmas Tree Farm, etc., which I do enjoy all of those. I've read up until the Christmas Tree Farm and now the Strawberry Patch Pancake House. I enjoyed them all. They're just light, fluffy, a little bit spicy romance reads of this small town. I love stuff like that. I feel like they're just a good palate cleanser and like a fun, easy read. This, however, was definitely my least favorite of the bunch. This is the read I gave 1 star, which I think I don't even think I rated it because I was kind of pissed off. This, first of all, the first 70% of the book were fine. I thought it was okay, but I think the main characters, Archer and Iris, just had the least amount of chemistry for me. Also, this is about Iris, who moves in to be a live-in nanny for Archer. He is a world-renowned chef who had to move back to Dream Harbor after finding out that the woman he had like a one-night stand with 5 years ago had a child, and now she's passed away, so now he's a single father. That's why he hires Iris to be a live-in nanny. Quickly to summarize, I think part of it, one, I don't think I like that dynamic. I don't think I love the like nanny dad trope. I just feel like the imbalance, like power imbalance, can be a little weird. I don't know. I don't hate it. I think I've read one of the Chestnut Hills books is that same trope, and I didn't hate that. I thought it worked out fine, but I just wasn't as engrossed in the story as with the other ones. I didn't find their chemistry super enjoyable to read, and overall very insularly, very fast paced, which they all kind of are. This just did not sit right with me as much. But all that being said, I would have probably given it a low 3 stars. Then at the end of the book, we find out that this is a spoiler. Put it right here. we find out that Iris, who throughout the entire book is very adamant that she does not want her own children, that she does not feel capable to be a mother, that she does not feel like she has like the certain, I don't know, like emotional and mental capabilities of being a mother, I don't know, is pregnant. And let me tell you, the timeline, I literally know because it tells you exactly. This book starts in March, and of the same year, in July, she is pregnant. And I said this in my blog that I read this in. I don't care about that really. Like, if you want to meet a man and have a baby in 4 months, who cares if that's what you want? But the fact that she was so adamantly in the first 70% of the book, even up to a chapter before we find out, because there was hints, she was like, I can't do this. I cannot be a full-time mom. And like, yes, of course, she is like babysitting this 5-year-old and she becomes very close with her. And they have a very sweet bond. Her not dislike of children, I don't think she ever disliked them, but she never thought she could relate to them, I guess, kind of lessens, and she, you know, has a good relationship with the child. I just feel like a 5-year-old who you did not give birth to and a newborn baby are two very different things. I just don't think I liked that for her character, and I have never read the accidental pregnancy trope. I don't even think I would hate it in the right circumstances. This, though, was not for me. So that's upsetting. I think I probably will continue on in the story. They're all like individual stories like that interconnect. So I probably would continue this series. This one was just a dud for me. Okay, Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. This was another physical book that I used for my buzzword challenge, which was read a book with made, make, or making in the title. So Violet Made of Thorns. And this was a interesting read. Like I said, I feel like none of the books I read this month went the direction that I thought they were going, which is not always a bad thing. I think keeping me on my toes. This is about Violet, who is a seer for a kingdom, and she knows that the king is going to, I think either, I don't even remember, pass away or retire, I don't know, and the prince is going to become the king, and they kind of have a tumultuous relationship. It's like kind of enemies to lovers, but they're also friends because they live in the castle together, and they grew up together. I don't really know. What I did enjoy was the fact that they were definitely enemies. Like, they beefed and bickered for 90% of the book, and when they got together, even when they were like making out, they were like, I hate you. I was like, okay. I feel like I do like when we don't give up the enemies plot so early on, and then it just almost feels insta-lovey, because it's like, okay, you guys were just being like, I hate you 3 pages ago, and now you're like, I would die for you. Like, that honestly never happened. Like, Violet was always kind of this character who was looking out for herself throughout the entire book, and selfish, I guess, but I'm also kind of like, okay, I would too, Violet. I don't blame you. Like, sometimes you got to look out for yourself. And that never changed, and I think I really appreciated that. I think her not bending and becoming this person who was like, oh, well, I love him, so now I have to kind of change my character for him. I enjoyed that. The plot, I think, is what lost me a little bit. I wish I could take these characters and put them in a different story. It just was like a lot to take in. There was like magical elements. There was obviously like the political intrigue of the kingdoms, and the magic got a little confusing in the end. I was like, okay, what's going on here? And I did enjoy it, but I just feel like this is, 1, a standalone book. 2, it's not that long. I honestly feel like this could have been longer and a little bit more explained and stuff with the magic. Because it was interesting. It was like witchy magic, and there was like an evil witch, and there was like almost hints that Violet could know the evil witch. I don't know. It got really confusing, I feel like, in the end for me. Overall, I don't think this is a favorite, but I did appreciate the characters, and I like that it was a standalone, although I wish it was a little longer. Next was Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score, another physical book, which I really killed it on my physical TBR this month, I feel. And this is about Naomi, who is a runaway bride because her twin sister calls her asking for help, and she kind of drops everything, runs to go help her. Also, she did not want to marry that man. That's a whole nother thing. So makes sense. But her twin sister is a complete mess and kind of terrible to her. And so she ends up stealing her car and her purse and leaves Naomi in this town that she's never been to with no car, no purse, and also a niece that she had no idea about, who is like 12 years old. So a little bit of a stressful situation. And then comes along Knox, which I hate that name. Sorry. I know I shouldn't say that. I can't with that name. Anyways, so Knox comes along. He's lived in this town his whole life. He knows the twin sister is a real B word and actually ends up helping her and her niece out quite a bit. And then obviously there is romance. Hello. There's also some like very crazy, I don't know if it's not mafia, maybe it's mafia. There's like a little like crazy mafia mob situation as well that happens like in the later half of this book that definitely kept it exciting. I did not want to enjoy this book because it is a little silly, but as you may know by now, I am a silly girl and I love a little silly romance read. At first I was not enjoying it. I read like the first few chapters and I was like, okay, this is not for me. It's a little too cheesy, but I persevered, I kept going, and I ended up really liking their relationship, and I ended up really liking Naomi. I loved her. I feel like I would want to be friends with her because was it a little bit frustrating that she kept trying to help her sister out and like help everyone out except for herself and made some interesting decisions? Yeah, that was a little annoying, but like overall I just feel like she was just really sweet and not fully like, I feel like sometimes romance books make like female characters very like sweet, like in a weird like princess, like she can do no wrong, like whatever. And I still feel like we saw a lot of Naomi's flaws and stuff, and she felt not totally typecast as like a sweet princess type character, which can kind of get old. And I just really loved the relationship. I thought it was sweet and silly. I do think I could have done a little bit less with Knox being a asshole, because obviously that is kind of his character. He is like sweet to Naomi to an extent, whatever. But there was moments where I'm like, okay, enough. Like the tortured man trope we need to bring it down a few levels. But it was a fun read. I enjoyed it. I feel like this is a good spring summer read. So if you're looking for a silly romance with some smut, which honestly I wish the smut scenes were a little bit better. They were a little weak in my opinion, but I think this is a fun one. Okay, next I am going to be talking about the books I read for my Southern Gothic reading vlog, which has just recently been posted. So go check that out. Take a little peek if you'd like to hear me talk about these books a little bit more and see some fun Southern Gothic-esque things that I got up to in that video. First one was When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. This is about Mira, who goes back to her hometown to attend the wedding of one of her friends, and this wedding is going to be on a plantation that she kind of had a history with when she was a child. Her and her guy friend, I think his name was Jesse, snuck onto the property to like get a look. It had been abandoned or seemingly abandoned, and some stuff goes down there. So she's not super excited to return, but she feels like she owes it to her friend. And she also wants to see Jesse, who she moved away soon after that incident at the plantation when they were teenagers, and feels like there could be some unrequited romantic feelings. I'd also like to mention that Mira and Jesse are both Black, and Celine, the bride, is white, as are most of her guests. And the plantation has had lots of rumors and gossip in the past that it is haunted. So that's key to mention. This is another one where I wish they pushed the horror a little bit more. Although I do think what they were doing was giving us a more traditional ghost story, which I do respect and value. I think, again, maybe my expectations just led to my own disappointment a little bit. And also I feel like I was at this point getting into somewhat of a slump. I don't want to say that, but I just wasn't like as quick and eager to pick up reading as I had been in the beginning of the month. So I think that all plays into it. But I think if you're looking for a good summer ghost story with Southern Gothic elements, this is definitely a great choice. Just read trigger warnings. There's definitely some graphic and upsetting scenes, especially in regards to the slaves who were on the plantation back when it was running as a plantation. So keep that in mind. And for the vlog, I read The Bog Wife, and this was also just a 3-star read for me. It had really good elements that I enjoyed, but again, I don't know, maybe it was because I was in the slump, kind of. I just wanted to go further than it did, and I feel like there was just kind of some missed opportunities. This is about a family who lives on this bog in, I think, the Appalachian area, and they have to bury their patriarch, their father, in the bog after he passes away, so that the eldest son can then go into the bog the next day, and they receive a bog wife who they need in order to make sure that the land is plentiful and continues to bear fruit and other things. To me, again, I thought it was going to be a little bit more horror, and it was definitely leaning way more magical realism, which is fine. Again, I just expected something else. How many times am I going to say that? But this is my sign to not have expectations going to books. This follows 5 siblings who live in the house and have just buried their father and are waiting for the bog wife to come, and she does not. And so they basically have to come to terms with not only the idea of the bog dying and them having to maybe move or try to fix the bog in any way, but also dealing with the idea that maybe the traditions they grew up with and the superstitions of folklore are not even real. And honestly, at the end of the book, that's not even made totally clear at what is the case. I feel like maybe the folklore was real, but not totally in the way that they expected it to be. And I just wish they pushed more. I actually really enjoyed the characters. They were all very interesting and strange. Obviously, if you're living on a bog for your entire life with no outside influence, they're going to be a little strange, I think. But I wish we delved more into that. I wish we pushed the horror. I wish it was a little more thrilling. Or I just wish it was a little more exciting. I felt like I kept waiting for the big exposition, the big thing to happen to push the second half of the story. And honestly, it never happened. It just kind of kept going at the same tone and pace, which was a little bit disappointing. But I think the magical realism was done really well. I really liked the characters, and I think it's a really interesting plot. Had they have pushed those ideas further, I think this would have been a higher rating for me. Finally, I have When Devils Sing by Zancour. This is her debut novel. Also, look how beautiful this book is. I got the secondhand, and it was only like $10, but it's absolutely gorgeous. And this was the last book I read for my Southern Gothic vlog. I did enjoy this. This was definitely my favorite. I think I would give it a 3.75 or a 4. This is about 4 teenagers who live in small town Carrion, Georgia. And this is a town that is steeped in a lot of folklore, a lot of superstitions, specifically surrounding the return of the cicadas, which happens every 13 years, and around crossroads and a deal the original town founder made with a devil to get the town good and going. One of the teenagers receives an email from somebody else in the town who was just recently gone missing, saying that if he goes missing, that it is suspicious and that the neighboring town of Lake Clearwater should be investigated. Overall, trying to uncover this mystery of Carrion and Lake Clearwater. And they're finding out that a lot of the traditions they grew up on actually might be true, and the people at Lake Clearwater are kind of really dead set on keeping those traditions, and to do that they might have to get their hands kind of dirty. I think this was a really good horror, especially because it's YA horror, so it wasn't too crazy, but I did enjoy this. I think out of all the Southern Gothic books I read for my vlog, this will probably be my most highly recommended to others. That concludes all the books I read in May. I'm pretty happy with what I read, although I do wish I could have gotten a few more books into my Southern Gothic vlog that I had planned, but sometimes life does not work that way. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.